Now we will move on to consent.
All items are considered routine or implement an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested.
I know for myself, it's not about, I don't need to pull it, but I want to have some additional comments, and I had some questions on item E for myself. Is there anybody else?
And to the chair, I have a comments or questions for item F.
Anyone else? I have E, I have F.
Are you good?
Is it good?
I'm good.
Okay. Any action on the rest?
I will make a motion to approve the remainder.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve all but E and F. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
By voice vote, we have a unanimous decision. Item E, that was myself. That's the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the agreement with Mays and Associates for financial audit services for 3 years in the amount of $158,124. And I think it was more for us to hear, because when I was at City Hall, I had asked a couple questions. One is, this is our current auditor that just presented to us a short time ago. You're asking for an extension of their agreement to continue the services to the city, which is a requirement that we have the audit. So that would be a 3-year agreement. So the questions are, how long do you see that we let a service provide that service to the city? So is it 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, et cetera? 2, is it, how did you think they did? And that, you're coming in from another perspective, so it's a good set of eyes and a new person at the helm to give us that feedback. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you place them? And then also you had alluded to something as far as the economic aspect of it being within parameters based on the service and costs.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Medina. I'd be happy to answer those questions. I'm Keith DiMartini, the Finance Director for the city. And so to answer some of your questions, we have had Mays and Associates under contract to perform financial auditing services for the city for 3 fiscal years now. We did have a competitive bidding process when we decided to bring them on board, and the decision was made by council approximately 3 years ago. And so before you tonight is a request to extend their contract for 3 more years of providing financial auditing services. To answer your first question, I do believe that retaining them for an additional 3 years is completely appropriate, given the scope of the audit services that they provide, and the fact that there have been quite a lot of staff turnover with the city as of late, which I know that council is aware. I do believe it's a best practice, and it's advantageous for the city to retain our independent outside auditor during this period where we are bringing a number of staff up to speed. I believe that they have performed exemplary financial auditing services for the city of the 3 years that, as I discussed with staff that have worked with them directly and have reviewed their financial audit statements. And in this current year, where I worked very closely with them on preparing the fiscal year 17-18 financial statements and audit, I was very much impressed and satisfied with the work that they performed. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give them, an 8 or a 9, I guess would be. I think given my experience working with auditing firms for the past 14 years, they are great, and I want to extend them for an additional 3 years.
Any questions from colleagues? Okay. Yeah, Marty.
No, I thank you for pulling it, because that was one of the items I was also interested in hearing a little bit more about. So this contract, it's for 3 more years. Now, let's say it goes for a year, what are the potential for a breakup of the contract? Is it mutually required, or how does that work?
Sure. So we have the right to terminate the contract after really any point in time. So if we move into the 4th year or the 5th year and the city is not satisfied with the services that are being performed by our independent auditor, we can terminate the agreement. And just to go back to one of the questions that you asked, Mayor Medina, I apologize, about the economic considerations. For us to extend the contract, Mays is basically keeping their fee to us flat, which is going to result in cost savings on this contract for us. I fully suspected that if we were to go out to bid and have a process, I do not believe that we would get as competitive of a rate from another auditor.
Thank you for that, too. My last question is, typically, how long does an auditor stay on board with the city? It seems like at some certain point, it would be beneficial to have a new set of eyes so that there's kind of like something different, a different angle. So maybe you can answer that question before we vote.
Sure. For private entities, there's different requirements, but for a municipal entity, there really is no, I think, end game, or I'm not aware of one at this time. I believe, though, that once we approach 6 years, I would fully expect that we would go out to bid again and perhaps bring another independent auditor in, because they would have been on board for 6 years. But again, by that time, city staff will have been on board for a number of years, so that seems like an appropriate time to make a transition like that. So I don't see any issue with, having them on board for 6 years at this time.
Yeah. Hi, Council. Javon Grogan, City Manager. I'll just kind of piggyback on that. Best practice is really about 5 to 7 years to send your audit out for an RFP and think about changing your auditor. You don't have to change, but that's typically the sweet spot. You really don't want to be changing your auditor every 2 or 3 years, but you also really don't want to go 10 years with the same auditor. And so cities do it in various different ways, but best practice in the industry is somewhere between that 5 to 10 year mark to at least put it out for bid, see if you have current up-to-date pricing, and consider changing your auditor.
Can I get one more in there, sure, Mayor? So legally, for a publicly bid service, what is prohibiting the firm, if there's nothing written on actually bidding on the services? So we go another 3 more years and it's a publicly bid service? Is there some legal agreement that we sign saying we're going to grant you this, but you can't bid on the following?
No, so I do think it's important to clarify our terms. So this is not a bid as in a low-cost construction, build a restroom project bid. This is a request for proposals, and under state law, the city has the authority to select whichever proposer it wishes, regardless of what the price is, as long as the proposer meets the qualifications and is the best qualified. And so to answer your question, there is not any prohibition that would prevent a current participant from proposing in the next round, nor from having the city either select them or select somebody else.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director. Thank you. Let's move on to F, which is a resolution approving the installation of red curb around the corners of the intersections of Cherry Avenue and Hickory Avenue, Cherry Avenue, Juniper Avenue, and Cherry Avenue and Holly Avenue. Laura?
Thank you. So I guess the concern with this one is originally when this was presented to the committee, Traffic Safety Committee, there was a concern with the traffic along Cherry Avenue and the congestion, buses, cars, et cetera. And so there was a request to have the curbs painted on the west side. And I guess now that it's coming back and was denied, and now the recommendation is to red curb the corners, but staff also doesn't recommend that. And the reason for that recommendation is, again, the maintenance and corners really, aren't necessarily approved parking locations. This one here kind of bothers me in the sense that I don't see the concern with having to paint these red corners along Cherry. I almost want to concur with staff's recommendation that this is not a congested area where you see cars all over the place. I think that the better solution, if we were going to address the traffic and the concerns along Cherry Avenue, that would have been to eliminate the parking on the west side. But I know the number of residents that came in and against that, and the decision was made. And I prefer the recommendation to deny that request. So I kind of want to understand a little bit about how we got to where we're at today.
Good evening,
Jimmy?
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Jimmy Tan, Public Works Director. And I have my staff, Michael Cotto here, who did the analysis for this project. He will be able to answer additional information. But I know there were extensive analysis that was done for this item. As you can see in the staff report, it took about a year through data collection and then through the through the analysis that the staff has done and through contact with Samtrans regarding what their thoughts about putting in red curbs on the west side of 700 block of Cherry. So as I understood it too, Michael, would you like to come here with me? As I understood it, the issue was brought up by one resident in the city. Was concerned about the S curve that is there in regards to the narrow width of the roadway and also the bus travel lane. And so staff did analysis to determine whether there's any issues on that, and they had a meeting at the TSPC to discuss it. And then TSPC recommended that that the red curves shouldn't be taken into consideration, and perhaps just painting the corners of the intersections instead. So, Michael, do you want to add any more to that? There was the second TSPC meeting as well.
So I think the reason that and I don't want to put words in the mouth of the TSPC, but I believe the reason is that there were residents who were there who did express some concern about the cars that were parking on the corners. It was somewhat related, but not exactly the same issue that was their problem with the area. And I think so the TSPC sort of just kind of shifted gears a little bit in that, based on the feedback from the residents and also from Samtrans, that they didn't feel the parking, removing a whole block of parking was necessary, but that maybe they could address some of the people who came to the meeting, some of their concerns by recommending the red curb on the corners instead.
Since we've got a couple members from is it okay that anybody, if there's a comment or anything to add to that, would like to comment?
Let's go through staff. So, because they just gave, I think, a feedback from the meeting and the vote. So, are we looking for something specific or
anything just that was not already commented on? Okay, thank you.
No, you good? Okay. Are you in favor or opposed, or do we need to do this separately or together?
You got a comment?
Sure, Marty.
Got it. So I have a slightly different opinion, or actually it's totally different. I think the red curb should be put in place. Most people, when they see red curb, it's clear to them. They're not going to park there. I'm into making sure where we can add safety to improve the safety, that those red curbs are important. We need, in my opinion, that it could be used in many other locations. And I think this is a great opportunity we have the cost, $1,500 cost to do this work, and we can see how that works out. And as we approach our budget, we could look at taking on more red curb to kind of see what it really costs to do it. My question to staff would be, in the event that we do proceed with putting this red curb, there is a citation amount for parking in front of a red curb. Is there what would the cost be for parking at these curb returns when there's a curb ramp and the red curb? Is there 2 tickets that get issued, or is it just 1 ticket?
Good evening. Typically, it'll be 1 citation. There's a difference between a red curb and the curb cutout for the handicap access, that the red curb does not extend beyond that or through the entire width of the handicap access. So you're either parked in the red zone, or you're parked blocking the crosswalk. So it would be 1 of 2 citations.
Got it. So that's the one question. Thank you for that.
Okay.
I noticed in the report, maybe you can confirm this for me, that we have red curb, or we have bus stops identified in this on this street, and there's no red curb at the bus stops. I did a little walk down El Camino, and all of the red curbs on El Camino all of the bus stops in El Camino have red curbs. And then I went up Genevan, and there's no red curbs there either. So I think this would be an opportunity, or maybe you can tell me, when is it required to have a red curb in front of a bus stop? And if it is, then we are missing a number of them.
So to my knowledge, there is not really any requirement that the bus stop has to be painted red. And that is generally something that between the transit agency and possibly the city could potentially initiate on our side as well. But between the two, there would be some decision as to whether or not a bus stop, could or should be painted red.
Okay. All right. That'll be a separate issue. I'm on the TSPC liaison, and we'll deal with that then. But those are my questions, so thank you.
Okay. Let's just, since with the discussion, let's just take E and F separately, that we could put it together, but just to be safe. So can I have an action regarding action on item E?
I'll make a motion to approve that resolution.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve item E under consent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
A 5-0, voice. Yes. I'm sorry, Irene.
No, that's okay. I just feel compelled to say a little something about this. I think I understand your position about the red curbs. I walk that block almost every day, and I don't think it's going to help much about what the people were concerned with about speeding and the narrowness of the street, which is unfortunate. But I think it will give a feeling of protected corners there, and people will have a little better line of sight if with those two pieces. So it's not a perfect solution, as we were saying earlier, but it is an improvement, I think, that'll help out. So with that, I will move to approve.
Is there a second? Second. Motion made and second to approve item F under consent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One.
Okay, 4-1. Okay, moving on to conduct of, Mr. Cato, since you're here, off topic, I wanted to let you know, and I know I expressed this, but I not only received an email from a resident in the area that we were just discussing, but also a letter in the mail, also once again complimenting you for your getting back to them in an extremely quick, timely fashion and assisting them. So since you're here, I want to publicly acknowledge that in front of the team that thank you. For someone to write an email and write a letter, you've made an impression.